Hello and welcome to the history of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game. Join me as we venture into the dark past to bear witness to the game's earliest years. This is the third part of an ongoing series. If you haven't, please check out the previous video. Let's begin, shall we? Volume 4. On July 22nd, Konami released Volume 4. At this point, saying this almost feels redundant, but this set changed everything. Actually, I take it back. One card in this set changed everything. Can you guess what card I'm talking about? If you said Summon Skull, you're right. Well, kind of, because this card is actually called Demon Summon in Japanese. Close enough, though. The powerful Fiend made his debut in this set as an ultra rare. Fans of the old school Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG need no introduction to this card, because it's as much of an icon in that game as it is in the OCG. Summon Skull took the spot of the best one tribute monster upon its release, as a level 6 monster with an attack value equal to Dark Magician. Dark Magician, who at one time held the honor of being the best monster, has now been rendered completely worthless. But why, Konami? Why is Summon Skull a level 6 and Dark Magician a level 7? Well, clearly this is because of Konami's arbitrary system of defining levels. Because Summon Skull has less defense than Dark Magician, this is most likely why it has one less level and requires only one tribute. Summon Skull's emergence made it far easier to get rid of 2,000 defense point monsters, which reduced their value greatly, and in my opinion, probably led to more interesting games. Until now, the best one tribute was Curse of Dragon, which could not even defeat a giant soldier of stone. However, 2,000 defense point monsters were not rendered worthless, and still remain important because now they function primarily as tribute fodder. What other cards were introduced in this set? Anything quite as good as this guy? Let's take a look. We've got two more ultra rares, Elegant Egotist, that's right, it's now possible to use Cyber Shield, and Right Leg of the Forbidden One. Right Leg is the third Exodia piece so far. Elegant Egotist is notable for allowing a duelist to special summon a monster, which was still quite rare. Although you can easily brick with this card, it wasn't an absolutely terrible method of gaining field presence if you're lucky enough. The problem with this card is Harpy Lady Sisters, who came in as a secret rare. The Sisters aren't quite good enough to make the Harpy Lady strategy competitively viable, due to being easily outed by Summoned Skull, who doesn't require a specific card to be on the field. Sadly, the Sisters can't even take on a Curse of Dragon and are most useful in defense position. As for our super rares, here we have 3. Magician of Faith is a fantastic monster that allows you to recycle one spell card from your graveyard upon being flipped. There's an argument that Magician of Faith was a better card than Summon Skull at the time of this set's release because it allows you to get many of the powerful spell cards that already existed like Pot of Greed, Monster Reborn, and Raigeki. I'll let you guys discuss this in the comments. There's no debate that Magician of Faith would remain relevant for far longer than Summon Skull, but at this time, Summon Skull was the card that everyone wanted. However, getting back a Pot of Greed is ridiculously strong. Don't forget, you could still play 3 Pot of Greeds. That means theoretically, you could use Pot of Greed 6 times in a single game with the help of Magician of Faith. We've also got Cocoon of Evolution. This card gives you a way to actually summon Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, which released as a promo for the Duel Monsters 2 video game. Its counterpart, Petite Moth, released alongside Cocoon as a common. When the Cocoon is equipped to Petite Moth gains the same stats as it. The only point of this combo is to summon Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, which you can special summon by tributing Petite Moth that has been equipped with Cocoon of Evolution for 6 or more turns. To make this convoluted requirement even worse, Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth must be summoned from the hand. Although Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth has fantastic stats, the best in the game at this point, it's simply not worth it. Your opponent has 6 turns to find some form of monster removal, which isn't hard. In addition, the fact that Summon Skull is now a threat makes a 2,000 defense monster much weaker. It's a shame because I like the concept of the Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth combo, and I like what they were going for. I just wish it were a bit easier to pull off. 6 turns is just insane. The last super rare is Mask of Darkness. This is a counterpart to Magician of Faith, but it allows you to add a trap from grave instead of a spell. Because traps are less common and less useful than spells at this point, Magician of Faith was immediately superior. As usual, we've got 5 rares, and this time they come in the form of monster removal. Each of these cards destroys all monster on the field of a certain type. Eradicating Aerosol destroys bugs, Warrior Elimination destroys warriors, Eternal Drought destroys fish, Breath of Light destroys rocks, and Acid Rain destroys machines. These cards would obviously be better if they destroyed monsters of a certain attribute rather than type, but they probably still had their uses in casual play. If any of these cards destroyed fiends, they might have been included as a side deck card. However, as removal cards weren't hard to come by, these cards overall aren't worth it. They would have been much better if they also helped the turn player in some way rather than simply hindering the opponent. Any notable commons? To be honest, not really. In addition to our usual assortment of normal and fusion monsters, we have two effect monsters, Electric Lizard and Steel Scorpion. Electric Lizard's effect states a non-zombie monster attacking Electric Lizard cannot attack on its following turn. Steel Scorpion's effect says, a non-machine type monster attacking Steel Scorpion will be destroyed at the end phase of your opponent's second turn after the attack. Yeah, these cards are not very good, but they probably have their uses on the playground. 1600 attack is still the highest attack available amongst the level 4 monsters. In fact, they didn't even introduce a new one with that much power. No new trap cards were introduced here, which I find even more absurd than usual, since Konami introduced a card specifically designed to fetch you trap cards from the graveyard. All in all, Volume 4 is one of the more lackluster sets so far, with the exception of Summon Skull and Magician of Faith, but these two cards alone were more than enough to shake things up. Summon Skull decks are unquestionably the most powerful at this point. Here's a deck that a very lucky individual may have taken to a certain upcoming tournament. Game Guide 2. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 2 received not one, but two game guides. At this point, Konami is already pretty well aware that people will buy anything just to get their hands on a card, and as such, included one here. If you ask me, it might even be the whole reason they came out with two strategy guides for a relatively simple game. Anyway, the card they included is none other than the fourth Exodia piece, the left arm of the Forbidden One. Only one remains. Valuable Book 1. On August 20th, publisher Shuei Isha released official card catalog, The Valuable Book 1, and with it came two new cards and an entirely new method of summoning. The two promotional cards were Dukoro Rider, a ritual monster, and Revival of Dukoro Rider, a ritual spell. Ritual monsters are special summoned with the aid of a ritual spell card. The ritual monsters live in the main deck and must be hard drawn along with their corresponding spell card. The cost of summoning ritual monsters is very high, and thus must be extremely strong to ensure that it's worth doing so. So is Dokuro Rider a worthy inclusion in one's deck and worth the high summoning cost? No. It's ridiculously underpowered and it remains the weakest non-effect ritual monster to this day. Nobody used it. What a missed opportunity. If this card at least matched the attack power of Summon Skull, maybe it would have been played. The book itself catalogs 451 cards, including those in Volume 1, 2, 3, Booster 1, 2, 3, as well as Booster 4, which came out a few days later. This book series continues to this day in Japan. Duelist Legend at Tokyo Dome. August 26, 1999. The day was finally here. It was the biggest, most exciting tournament up to that time, but it would soon end in disaster. Let's talk about the riot at Tokyo Dome. First, we'll set the scene. Prior to the tournament, Konami announced an exclusive pack that would only be obtainable at the tournament, Premium Pack 1. If you miss this event, they said, you'll miss out on obtaining this pack forever. This was a crucial error on Konami's part because they clearly underestimated the popularity of their new game and the tenacity of their already loyal fan base. You can already see where this is going, huh? The event's purpose was to hold two tournaments, one for the Game Boy game Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 2, and one for the Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG. However, the majority of the visitors came for one thing, that very special and very exclusive premium pack. A staggering 55,000 people attended the event. That's an unimaginable amount of people, and it's truly a testament to how popular the game had already become. The Tokyo Dome was ridiculously and dangerously packed. An additional 10,000 people were turned away from entering, bringing the total number of people to 65,000. Attendees recall being unable to move amidst the colossal crowd. But wait, how did so many people get in? If you recall from my previous video, Konami sent out invitations to selected duelists. To be clear, the selected duelists were purchasers of the Game Boy game. Well, sometime prior to the tournament, Konami changed their admission rule and allowed anyone who purchased Shonen Jump to attend. The second mistake on their part. The third and worst mistake of all, Konami did not prepare enough packs. For one thing, they only sold the packs at a single outdoor stand underneath the scorching sun. Tens of thousands of people gathering at a single stand to purchase a very in-demand product never ends well. Add hot weather to the equation and you're in for a very bad time. Furthermore, Konami did not print enough packs to begin with. Their immediate solution was to delay the pack sale by 2 hours in an effort to organize the crowd and calm things down. However, they failed to communicate this decision to the crowd, which led to mass confusion. Sometime after these initial 2 hours passed, unable to rectify the situation in any way, Konami canceled the sale of the pack altogether. This angered the crowd even further, resulting in riot police being called in. Thousands of protesters stayed throughout the night to voice their disapproval at the organizers, who practically begged them to leave due to a baseball game that was supposed to occur the next day. The actual tournament was canceled midway through, with the remaining rounds taking place on later dates. Supposedly, 2 people were hospitalized, but I can't find any mention of this in news articles from the time, so I can't confirm whether or not this is true. Regardless, this event made national news. Probably due to its chaotic nature and eventual fate, I can't find any deck lists from the tournament. As I always say though, it's unlikely that anyone actually brought a perfectly optimal deck like the Volume 4 deck that I showed earlier. The following day, Konami apologized for the tournament and announced that they would allow participants of the tournament to order the premium pack through the mail. All you had to do was provide some sort of proof that you attended, such as by mailing a star chip, which they would then mail back to you along with the pack. Naturally, this led to many people acquiring multiple packs by sending in multiple pieces of evidence separately, and led to the creation of a small black market where people sold their tournament memorabilia so that others can order the pack. Premium Pack 1. Okay, so what was in this pack anyway? Was it really worth rioting over? Well, obviously no pack of trading cards is worth rioting over. This pack did contain one very special card though. Let's take a look. This pack contained 9 cards in the ultra rare slot and 1 card in the secret rare slot. There are 7 normal monsters, none particularly exceptional. Cosmo Queen is the best here, being a 2 tribute monster with 2900 attack. Also notable is Meteor Dragon, which can be fused with Red Eye's Black Dragon to make Meteor Black Dragon, a very powerful monster with 3500 attack. In addition, we have 3 effect monsters. Goddess of Whim is not good. You can flip a coin and its attack either doubles or halves for the remainder of the turn, depending on the result. Its meager 950 attack makes this hardly worth it. It could boost itself to 1900 attack though, which is better than any 4-star monster at this point, so there's an argument for it at the time, but it would soon be outclassed as we'll see later. Our second effect monster in the ultra rare slot is none other than the final piece of Exodia the Forbidden One, the first alternate win condition card. Like its description says, you win the game automatically by holding each piece in your hand. It's one of the most famous cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh!, already very well known at the time for being used in the final battle of the Death T arc in the original manga. However, because each card was very rare, building a deck around it at this point was pretty difficult. The final effect monster and the card taking up the secret rare slot was Time Wizard, another coin flip monster. By calling a coin flip right, you can destroy all of your opponent's monsters, which is a very useful effect. However, by calling it wrong, you must destroy all of your own monsters and take damage equal to their combined attack. This makes it very risky and is overall an extremely bad version of Raigeki. However, due to its usage in the manga, it was popular enough to warrant its high rarity. The tournament also featured attendance, participation, and prize cards. The 2 cards guaranteed to each tournament participant were both ultra rares, those cards being Gate Guardian and Magician of Black Chaos. Gate Guardian is extremely powerful, but can only be special summoned by tributing Sangha of the Thunder, Kazejin, and Suijin, making it very hard to summon and probably not worth including in a deck. Those 3 cards would be released later, making it impossible to summon at the time. Magician of Black Chaos is much better than Dukoro Rider, having 2800 attack, and thus being able to defeat a summoned skull. However, its ritual spell card wouldn't be released until months later. 3 participation cards were released during the tournament. Trihorn Dragon to first round participants, Sen Genjin to those in the second round, and Serpent Knight Dragon to those in the third round. All 3 are 2 tribute normal monsters. Finally, Konami provided prize cards to third, second, and first place winners. Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon was given to the champion, Meteor Black Dragon to second place, and Firewind Pegasus to third place. Firewind Pegasus is lackluster, but Meteor Black Dragon in particular is extremely strong, and Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon is just iconic. And although hard to summon and vulnerable to removal and disruption, its attack power is exceptional for the time. Needless to say, these cards were extremely rare since only one of each existed. Since these 3 cards were so rare, I'm basically going to pretend that they don't exist for now in future deck lists. Believe it or not, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon wouldn't be released in any form in the TCG until 2008, which is just fucking stupid. This is the worst example of a late release card in the history of the TCG that I'm aware of so far. And it's not like this card was only released this one time in the OCG. It was released many times before 2008, as we'll see later. Booster 4. Amazingly, the tournament that took place on August 26th was not actually the most noteworthy thing that happened that day, because Booster 4 was released on that day too. Booster 4 is surprisingly a very good set, and actually contains a higher number of useful cards than Volume 4. In fact, it's so good that it's almost kind of strange, and at this point in the game's history, it was probably the best pack ever. It's certainly one of the most egregious examples of power creep in the game's history. Let's take a closer look. The rares in this set are simply reprints of the rares from Volume 4, so I won't even talk about those. The commons in this booster are where it's at. Let's start with the lone spell in the common slot, Graceful Charity. That's all I need to say, right? This card is currently banned and very well might remain banned forever. Its effect is simple. Draw 3 cards and discard 2. It's very easy to understand the philosophy behind this card. It's Pot of Greed, but worse, right? In the end, you don't actually end up with any extra cards after all. Well, this was kind of true at the time because graveyard setup wasn't as important. However, later in the game, this becomes absolutely broken. And even without being completely broken, this card is still extremely good because even without breaking the game, it's a fantastic deck thinner and provides a choice of cards so that one can ensure they receive the best card for their particular situation. That's right, we now have Graceful Charity and Pot of Greed both playable at 3 copies. That's surely good for the game, right? We've got 2 new traps, which is more than usual. White Hole is a card that prevents your own monsters being destroyed when your opponent activates Dark Hole. We've also got Call of the Grave, which negates the effect of Monster Reborn. We'll soon see cards like this that negate specific cards becoming more common. It was Konami's answer at the time to reducing the power of certain cards, albeit a flawed one. Since these cards are so situational, it's best not to include them in your deck at all because they'll most likely see no use. Furthermore, Dark Hole was already limited. Besides Graceful Charity, the real value in this set lies in the ridiculous lineup of monsters, who brought a new level of offensive power to the game. First up, we have Axe Raider. He's got an attack value of 1700, which beats out the previous best of 1600. But wait, he's not actually the strongest level 4 in this set. La Jinn, Mystical Genie of the Lamp, also made his debut here, and he's got 1800. He's actually so strong that he beats out all of the level 5 monsters with the exception of Curse of Dragon, which completely changes the metagame. Wow, the best low level attack value increased by 200? That is insane. But wait, Mechanical Chaser was also introduced in this set. With an attack power of 1850, he's even better than Mystical Genie of the Lamp. Sure, he's got a low defensive value, but who cares? Cards like Rogue Doll look absolutely pathetic now. Mechanical Chaser is now the king. It's not even worth including 1600 attack cards in your deck anymore. But here's the thing. Mechanical Chaser is actually the second best. Gemini Elf, 1900 attack. This attack value was unfathomable. The best attack value increased by 300 in a single set. It seemed way too good for the time, and many players were concerned that the average power of monsters was increasing far too rapidly. The thought at the time was that attack values would continue to increase into infinity. At this rate, we'll see level 4s with a higher attack than Blue Eyes within a few sets. I've seen some players express their feeling at the time that this was the beginning of the end. Luckily, as we know now, this didn't happen. 1900 remained the benchmark for a long time, and vanilla 4-star monsters eventually never exceed 2000. However, players were concerned for good reason. Despite all of these meta-defining monsters, the aforementioned Graceful Charity turned out to be the most notable and important card, and it would eventually lead to one of the worst Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG formats of all time. Let's take a look at a deck that is now 100% legal. The draw power of this format is simply unreal. You can play 3 copies each of Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity, as well as 3 Magicians of Faith. You could easily draw more than half your deck in a single turn if you're lucky enough. Oh, and here's the thing. Monster Reborn already existed and was playable at 3 copies. That means the discard effect of Graceful Charity actually led to an advantage, even this early in the card game's history, because a player could discard a card like Blue Eyes and immediately revive it. Oh, and that's not all. At this time, there was no restriction on what monsters could be revived. There was no "this monster must first be special summoned" rule. That means you could dump Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, who had no such text in its description, into the graveyard and revive it with Monster Reborn. Don't forget, Trap Hole is still limited too, which makes it very hard or impossible to stop powerful monsters from being summoned. Let's be honest though, most players probably didn't even follow the limited list and saw it as being only applicable to the Tokyo Dome tournament at the time. This format was simply about who could draw their entire deck and summon the strongest monsters first. We've hit a low point, but we're not at rock bottom. It'll eventually get worse. To be honest, this format may still have been somewhat fun. There'd certainly be mind games at work here, and you would probably need to put a lot of consideration as to when you should use your power cards, as well as how to play around your opponent's power cards. Since this format relies heavily on powerful monsters, it might be worth siding in a crush card virus strategy. Although it's unfortunate that you'd have to take up 3 spaces in your deck with a weak dark monster, don't forget there's no Sangan yet, it might be worth it to rid your opponent of multiple monsters. The best tribute fodder for this card at this point to include is probably Mask of Darkness, because it's not totally useless. I'm not sure how well this strategy would work with 3 monster reborns in the format though, but it'd be worth a try. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a comment down below if you have any thoughts on anything I discussed today, if you think there's anything I can improve about my videos, or if there's anything you'd like to see from me in the future. If you're a cool kid, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, peace.